Welcome to the Dr. Donna podcast, here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. Innovative, evidence-based recovery that helps to identify intergenerational trauma, allowing for freedom and embracement of. Today, episode 129, Boundaries Revisited, Part 1. And now your host, Dr. Donna Bevan-Lee.
And I'm Dr. Donna. Welcome to my podcast. And today, Boundaries Revisited. I chose boundaries again because I've had I've had times in the last few weeks where people who have worked really hard on their childhood trauma issues, who could tell you all about boundaries because they've heard me talk about it for freaking ever. People who have been through my legacy workshops, people who've read my book, have worked with me for long hours on boundaries, having problems with boundaries. and one woman, not recently, but back, a couple of years ago, this was a person that I'm like, we've sat here for years. You've been through, my workshop. Trauma is resolved. You're no longer triggered, blah, blah, blah. And here is this boundary issue you're struggling with. And she said, well, it's the hardest thing of all. And why is that? I will tell you, here is the trick. Here is the reality about why it's hard to keep your boundaries. Are you listening? Because if you are not thinking about them, they're not there. So you might say, now, Dr. Donna, I've got other things to think about. I understand that. I understand it completely. But I want to tell you that if you're not thinking about your boundaries, they're not there. Now, when you are, say, preparing dinner, okay, you're probably not thinking about your boundaries. You're thinking about, I've got to do this and get this ready and, blah, blah, blah. And I might even be using a recipe, so I'm reading the recipe. None of it is about boundaries. You are absolutely boundaryless during that time. Now, there are, let me tell you what a boundary is, because sometimes, most of the time, I hear people telling me how they set boundaries with this person and they set boundaries with that person. It's not, it's not a semantics problem. All right? When you are setting boundaries with somebody, you are actually just setting limits with them. Here's the limit. This is as much as I'm going to take. Or you're being controlling in a negative way. Okay? Because if I'm telling you, I'll go back to last week's about fubbing. If I'm telling you that you can't do that while I'm there, that's a negative control. Okay? Because you can do whatever the heck you want. I'm not in charge of what you are going to do. I can say, and this is a confrontation, all right? This is for people who are confrontation avoidant. This is how a conversation would sound about fubbing. That is not controlling, and it is asking to set limits, and that is that when we're having a conversation, I would really like it if you would not have your phone in your hand looking at the phone. I would like for you to be looking at me and talking to me. And then, if you really want to let them know how it impacts you, you can say, I feel disrespected. I feel discounted. I feel ostracized. I feel like I might as well be sitting here like a rock. And in the future, if you continue that behavior, now here's the consequences, right? And in the future, if you continue that behavior, I'm just not going to be here. I don't want to have this in my life. So now see, you've identified the behavior. You've talked about you don't like it. You've talked about the way it makes you feel and what you think. And then you've talked about the consequences. That, people, is a confrontation. It's not, confrontation has a negative connotation. It's like when people think about confrontation, they think about yelling and screaming and, it is not about that. When you're in your adult reality, fubbing, right? It's like you in your adult reality and you want to talk to somebody about fubbing when you're around, you just say, when I'm here trying to have a conversation with you and you're looking at your phone all the time, I feel, here it is, discounted, ostracized, disrespected, and I, if you continue to do that, I'm not going to be here. Now, you see, that sounds a lot different than saying, you can't do that when you're around me. When I'm here, you can't do that. That's negative control. That's all that is. Negative control. Somebody say to me, oh, Donna, you can't do that. Unless it's a police officer who's pulled me over for speeding. They're right. I can't do that. It's against the law. Okay. But once you get out of that arena and you just get into life on life's terms, I can do whatever I want. And so can you. And the only thing that you have to worry about are consequences, because there will be consequences, intended and unintended. So here's what a boundary is. If it's not about negative control and trying to set limits, it is when you are able to keep yourself contained. That's a boundary. It's not complicated. It really isn't. There's whole books written about boundaries, and I'm telling you, you don't need a book to have boundaries. The only thing you need to do is be self-contained. How do you do that? And again, it's so simple. I'm responsible for what I say. I'm responsible for what I do. Period. And so when I'm self-contained, I'm making decisions about what I say and what I do. That's a boundary. I can think whatever I want. So far, until AI decides to figure it out, so far, there is no thought police. And you don't know what I'm thinking unless I tell you. You might think you know, but you don't. No more than I know what you're thinking. I don't know what you're thinking. Oh, sometimes I do. Because, well, look what I do for a living. Okay? It just kind of comes with the program. And I don't mean that we learn how to read minds, okay? I can tell what people are thinking sometimes by the way they act. That's all. Like I can watch and know that, you are watching that person over there and you would like to, have an affair with them. Or I can watch you interact with somebody and I know there's more going on than meets the eye. I just know. It's not because I could read minds. It's because years and years of experience looking at human behavior. I can tell if you don't have boundaries. Okay? Now, there are physical boundaries. Physical boundaries are this. I'm making decisions about who, when, where, and why I get touched. And I can say to somebody, please don't touch me. I can say if somebody says, can I give you a hug? No or yes. When somebody comes over and tries to hug me just because they're there and they think it's a great idea, I can just put my hand up and say, no, don't do that. And I can even say to somebody, I would appreciate it if you would ask me before you touch me or before you hug me. That is a physical boundary. It's just my physical body, and I make decisions about who, what, where, and why I get touched. Not complicated. And there are sexual boundaries, which are very similar to physical boundaries. Sexual boundaries are about who, when, where, and why I want to be sexual or not with you. And that comes with no. No means no means no. And I will say, and there will be people who disagree with me, but I think relationships where there is a reasonable expectation of sexual activity once in a while, like marriages or partnerships, like sometimes a partner, you might say, no, I'm too tired. No, I have a headache. No, whatever, right? That partner has a right to say, gosh, I am really feeling like I want to be sexual with you right now. And what can I do to maybe help you with that, right? Or can you reconsider? But then if no is the answer, then no means no. Okay. But for everyone else outside of that relationship, no means no. That's it. That's the end of the story. And when you're able to say no, which is kind of new, boomer women were not allowed to say no for any reason to any man. And if we did, we were called a bitch. Okay, so there you go. Now, I think it's more, women learn how to say no. And I would just tell you that if you are a female, you have a right to say no to anything. Now, like I said before, you're only responsible and accountable for what you say and what you do. So if you say no, you might have intended or unintended consequences for any number of reasons that you're saying no. But, most people think about that. It's like, okay, well, if I say no, what's going to happen here? But, when it comes to sexual behavior, the consequence will be that you get left alone. Okay? And that's good for all of us. If it's with a spouse and you keep saying no, 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 the unintended consequence might be that they decide that, I'm not getting my needs met in this marriage. Till I do, we're either having counseling or I'm going somewhere else. I mean, those are unintended consequences. But, people, when you get married or you're in a primary relationship, that's part of the deal, man, women. It is part of the deal. Okay, so I don't need to go into that. I'm talking about boundaries now. so I've talked about physical and sexual boundaries. Internal or emotional boundaries are about keeping yourself contained. Keeping yourself contained. I say what I mean. I think about what I'm going to do. So, for instance, so I went to Pride. Now, where I live, people get beat up here sometimes for being gay. And I think through the country, there was a lot of anxiety about going to Pride events because, well, they're trying to take away our rights again. And there's lots of people with guns walking around thinking that, kill a queer for Christ kind of thing. And that was actually a bumper sticker when I was coming out back in the 70s. And so, a little bit of trepidation about going, but feeling like it was really important to be seen. I mean, if we aren't seen, you won't know we're there because, well, you can't tell by looking for the most part. Okay. Anyway, so I made a decision to go, and I took care of myself around it. It's like I just go. I go look at all the booths. I talk to a few people. I listen to the music a little bit, and then I leave. And part of that was that because I'm pretty self-contained most of the time, 80% is what I think is acceptable. And I thought, the clouds are rolling in, literally. Clouds were rolling in. They were getting darker. And I said, I think we have about 30 minutes to get home before the clouds open up. And, it's like I'm used to looking at the sky and noticing weather patterns because I'm in the mountains a lot. You gotta be smart about these things. And so my friends who know me and know that I know some things about that agreed, and off we went. And literally, the clouds opened up as soon as I closed the door of my home as I walked in. And it just poured rain and thunder and lightning and everything else. And I was in my house and I thought, oh. But see, that was my behavior. I made choices because I have boundaries and I really am thinking about them when I'm in a crowd. Okay? So here's what happens. If you're aware of your boundaries, meaning your self-containment, and self-containment is I know what I'm thinking, I know what I'm doing, I'm making decisions, what's mine is mine, and what's yours is not mine. Okay? So if you're over there having an event, I don't need to have that event with you. It's important to watch and see what's going on because I don't want to be part of the consequence, right? But, you can't have those boundaries unless you're thinking about them. Unless you are thinking about what am I going to do or what am I going to say in this situation and realizing that what you're doing or saying in front of me is not my business. My business is what I'm saying and doing. It's like if I can't get that worked out, I am in boundary failure. And it's usually not a pleasant experience. Sometimes it's okay, but you don't get what you want. You don't get what you need. And if you're feeling baffled and confused about what's going on with that person, it's probably because, well, you're in boundary failure. So if you want to stay in boundaries, if you want to keep your boundaries, you be aware. So like I said, when I went to Pride, for all the reasons I said it, I thought, okay, this could be a danger zone. I feel like it's important to be seen once in a while as a gay person. And so I'm going to go. Now, if I would have got shot or something, that wasn't on me. That would be them, the person that fired the shot. But I made a choice to go, and whatever was going on there that wasn't a threat to my life was just interesting. And, you know, every Pride event I've ever been to, just like anybody else that goes to an event of, you know, when they're part of something, usually there's some kind of like extreme activity. And there is always some extreme, I think, extreme activity at Pride events. I mean, you know, people just want to be who they are. And, you know, there was some dress, you know, some people were dressed in ways that I thought were inappropriate or at, you know, out in public and stuff like that. But I was really clear that that probably happens every time I go anywhere. That happens when I go to a Pride event. And so, you know, all these things I thought about. I'm not just babbling here. It's like all these things I thought about. Now, of course, if you're talking all about all the things you're talking about, you're in boundary failure. Unless, of course, you're me trying to explain boundaries. But what I'm thinking is all these things, and what my behavior was that, well, all these things I know are true, and I'm going to go anyway. And so that's me having boundaries. And what all those people thought and said about me, I just made it none of my business. Literally not my business. Now, fortunately, there was no negative anything at this Pride event. And it was a family affair, with the exception of a few people that were just, you know, cover it up once in a while. And I'm not talking about sexual stuff, okay? I'm just talking about, this isn't the beach. Anyway, so when I made that decision, part of the decision was that I don't, you know, what everyone else thinks about me is not my business. Now, notice I did not say I don't care about what you think, because here's the kicker. This is the thing. Boundaries are meant to protect you, okay? If I don't care what you think about me, versus I'm not making it my business what you think about me. If I don't care, I've already made it my business. I care. If I decide that it's not my business, then whether I care or whether I don't care is irrelevant. I just go on with my life. I just go on with, you know, whatever it is I'm going on with. And that, on the outside, might look like, boy, she's doesn't seem to care about anything. Well, I care about many things. Many things. I would tell you, though, that unless you ask me or you want to have a conversation about one of the things that I care about, it's not, you know, it's not your business either. It's only your business if I decide to make it so. And that means that I'm telling you, or I'm acting in a way that makes it your business. So I think the best way to talk about this, and I'm just going to keep talking because, you know, these internal boundaries give people the biggest problem of all. People really struggle with them. And part of it is that we live in a society where it's a boundaryless festival. I just can't believe what people talk about, and with no context, right? I've had people on my podcasts before, if you've listened, who've talked about their addictions, their trauma, but it's within the context of healing their family legacy. It's not like, oh, I want to tell all about what happened to me. No, that's not what it's about. It's like there's a context for people sharing on this podcast. And there was a context, if you've read my book, there was a context for me sharing about what happened to me. It wasn't about, oh, I'm going to tell a story about what happened to me because, I have no boundaries. Trust me, before I used myself as the example, it probably took me 6 months of going back and forth and talking to, colleagues and, my son, my family about, okay, this is what I'm planning to do. What do you think about that? Do you think it would be better? Because I knew that I wouldn't, it's like, I didn't know what the consequences would be to me or anyone else. And so when I made that choice, I had to just accept whatever consequences came down the pike for me. And the people that, it's like my family was pretty much do whatever you want. We'll be okay. And it's like, okay, well, now, so consequences might come down the pike and they're going to be on you, not me. So these boundaries, it's like they happen all day long. When I said they were simple, it's simple. Internal boundaries means that you are being self-contained. And self-containment means that I make choices about what I say and what I do based on reality. And that I will have to, the only thing that I'm responsible for are the consequences of what I say and do, not what you're thinking about it. So we're going to pick this up again next time. I hope you revisit it.
Thank you for listening to the Dr. Donna podcast here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. This channel is made possible because of listeners just like you. If you would like to support the channel with your tax-deductible contribution on an ongoing basis or through a one-time gift, head over to experienceofthesoul.com/support. The Dr. Donna podcast is copyright 2023 Dr. Donna Bevan-Lee, all rights reserved. Our theme music is composed by Dave Croft and used with permission. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is a production of 818 Studios.
Hey friends, Sean here, your Experience of the Soul producer. I want to take a moment to tell you about something truly exciting. The SoulWorks online community, created by your host, Cynthia Alice Anderson, and available on the Mighty Networks app. If you're looking for a place where you can explore your spiritual path, connect with others, and grow in a meaningful way, then this is for you. SoulWorks is so much more than an online community. It's a safe, inclusive space for spiritual exploration, self-discovery, and personal transformation. Inside the community, you'll find everything from uplifting spiritual studies to soul-centered growth practices, meditations, affirmations, and so much more. It's a space where you'll always be supported and never judged. The best part, membership is free. You'll have access to powerful resources, inspiring content, and a supportive group of like-minded people who are all on their own unique spiritual journeys. And if you're ready to dive deeper, there are premium options available to enhance your experience with a live Monday night talk series and extended, deeper meditations. If you're seeking a place to connect, grow, and nurture your soul, we would love to have you join us in the SoulWorks community and see where this journey can take you. Visit my.soulworkscommunity.com today.